Welcome, and I'm Dominic and today's reading is brought to you by the Limerick Writers Centre in association with Poetry Ireland's National Poetry Day. And today's theme is revolution. We've taken a slightly eclectic stance on that. So I'll just hand you over to our Master of Ceremonies for the event, Patrick McMahon.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Hunt Museum. Today has been designated Poetry Day by Poetry Ireland, which is the national organisation for poetry. To celebrate the day, poetry readings have been organised throughout the country. Poetry Ireland have chosen the theme of revolution for today's events, and they say we're inviting everyone to rebel, to revolutionise, and at least for a day, and hopefully for more than a day, to make poetry inescapable and irrepressible. Today's reading here in the Hunt Museum is brought to you by the Limerick Writers Centre, and we have used a wide definition of the idea of revolution. Today's poems are about revolution and transformation, and several of the poems explore the meaning of existence. Anais Nin, the French-born novelist, said that there's a whole set of magic words that she wanted us to write down and keep forever as formulas. These magic words, she said, are all in the dictionary under the prefix trans, which means to change or make movement, transforming, transcending, transposing, transfiguring, transmitting. All of these trans, she said, are a vital necessity, not only to our human life, but also to our creativity. And we hope to capture some of these today. Much of the poetry you will hear today is poetry in translation. And the American poet Kenneth Coke said, there are voices in European poetry today not heard in poetry written in English. The poetry of Britain and America may seem to include everything until we read formal poetry in translation. So I hope that at this lunchtime reading that you will experience and enjoy not just Britain and American poetry, but some of the richness of European and Latin American poetry. So our first poem today is by W.H. Auden. Auden, as you know, had a major influence on the poetry of the 20th century, and much of his poetry is concerned with moral and social issues. And the poem you're going to hear, Auden urges us to seize the moment, not to live in the past, or keep putting things off to some future days. Teri Murray reads Another Time by W.H. Auden.
Thank you, Pat. Another Time by W.H. Auden. For us, like any other fugitive, like the numberless flowers that cannot number, and all the beasts that need not remember, it is today in which we live. So many try to say, not now, so many have forgotten how to say I am and would be lost if they could in history, bowing, for instance, with its old world grace to a proper flag in a proper place, muttering like ancients as they stump upstairs of mine and his and ours and theirs. Just at the time where all that used to will, when it was gifted with possessions still, just if they were wrong in no more wishing to belong. No wonder then so many die of grief, so many are so lonely as they die. No one has yet believed or liked a lie. Another time has no other lives to live. Thank you.
The great Spanish modernist poet from Andalusia, Garcia Lorca, didn't much like New York when he spent 9 months there at the beginning of the Great Depression. He was aghast at American capitalism with its big winners and destitute losers. And he was fascinated and he was frequently repelled by what he saw there. And he was homesick for his native Andalusia. The next poem is a cry of protest against mindless consumption and the adoration of technology. Dominic reads New York, Office and Denunciation by Federico Garcia Lorca.
Under the multiplications, there's a drop of duck's blood. Under the divisions, there's a drop of sailor's blood. Under the sums, a river of tender blood. A river that sings its way through outlying bedrooms. It is money, cement, or wind in the false dawn of New York. The mountains exist, I know it. And eyeglasses for wisdom, I know. But I haven't come to see the sky. I've come to see the muddled blood that sends machines to the waterfall and the spirit to the cobra's tongue. Every day in New York, they slaughter 4 million ducks, 5 million pigs, 2,000 doves for the pleasure of the dying, 1 million cows, 1 million lambs, and 2 million roosters that leave the sky in splinters. Better to weep sharpening the blade or murder the dogs in the hallucinating hunts than resist at dawn the endless train of milk, the endless trains of blood, the trains packed with roses handcuffed by the perfume merchants. The ducks and the doves and the pigs and the lambs lay their drops of blood under the multiplications. And the terrible cries of crushed cows fill the valley with sorrow where the Hudson gets drunk on oil. I denounce all the people who ignore the other half, the unredeemable half, who lift their mountains of cement over the still beating hearts of small, forsaken animals, and where we are headed in the final feast of jackhammers. I spit on your faces. The other half listens to me, devouring, urinating, flying in its innocence like the boys in the doorways who place fragile sticks into holes where the antennae of insects rust. This isn't hell, it's the street. This isn't death, it's the fruit store. There is a world of broken rivers at infinite distances, and the cat's paw crushed by a car, and I hear the worm's song in the heart of many girls. Rust, fermentation, shaken earth, earth yourself swimming through the members in the offices. What can I do? Bring order to the landscape. Bring order to the many loves who will, in time, turn to photographs and then pieces of wood and mouthfuls of blood. No, no, I denounce it all. I denounce the conspiracy of those deserted offices, swept clean of agony, that erase the designs of the forest, and I offer myself to be eaten by the crushed cows when their screams fill the valley where the Hudson gets drunk on oil.
Our next poem is by the Greek poet Constantine Cavafy. Cavafy connects the legendary journey of Ulysses to the journey of every man through life, and suggests that each person is looking for his own ITHACA, his personal goal. However, in the end, it is not the goal, but the journey that matters, because the journey makes us wise and gives us the richest good. It gives us experience, knowledge, and maturity. Donal Thurlow reads Ithaca by Constantine Cavafy.
As you set out for Ithaca, hope that your journey is a long one, full of adventure, full of discovery. Lestrygonians and Cyclops, angry Poseidon, don't be afraid of them. You'll never find things like that on your way, as long as you keep your thoughts raised high, as long as a rare sensation touches your spirit and your body. Lestrygonians and Cyclops, wild Poseidon, you won't encounter them unless you bring them along inside your soul, unless your soul sets them up in front of you. Hope that your journey is a long one. May there be many summer mornings when with what pleasure, what joy, you come into harbours you're seeing for the first time. May you stop at Phoenician trading stations to buy fine things, mother of pearl and coral, amber and ebony, sensual perfume of every kind, as many sensual perfumes as you can. And may you visit many Egyptian cities to learn and learn again from those who know. Keep Ithaca always in your mind. Arriving there is what we're destined for. But don't hurry the journey at all. Better if it lasts for years, so that you're old by the time you reach the island, wealthy with all you've gained on the way, not expecting Ithaca to make you rich. Ithaca gave you the marvellous journey. Without her, you would not have set out. She's nothing left to give you now. And if you find her poor, Ithaca won't have fooled you. Wise as you will have become, so full of experience, you'll have understood by then what these Ithacas mean.
Our next poem is by Piedad Bonnet, who is a poet and novelist from Colombia in South America. She believes that an artist is always reading the world and translating it into words. And she says that for me, the world is still a challenging and beautiful thing in which there is always sadness. And this is a wonderful poem about her father. Brendan Hayes reads Biography of a Fearful Man by Piedad Bonnet.
My father was soon afraid of having been born, but he soon also remembered the duties of a man, and they taught him to pray, to save, and to work. So that soon my father was a good man. A real man, my grandfather would say. Nevertheless, like a dog whining, muzzled, and tied to a stake, fear persisted at the core of my father. Of my father, who as a boy had sad eyes, and as an old man, hands and solemn as clean as silence at dawn. And always, always, the air of a lonely man. So that when I was born, my father gave me all that his oriented heart knew how to give. And that included the loving gift of his fear. As an upright man, my father woke each morning and got around each night. When he was able to, he bought in installments the little death he always wished to have. He paid for it strictly, without any anxiety, year after year. Like an upright man, my good old father.
death shall have no dominion, and who urge us to rage for life. Edward O'Dwyer reads, "Do not go gentle into that good night" by Dylan Thomas.
Decided I have to read this better than Richard Burton. Yeah, right. Do not go gentle, by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in the green bay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late, they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on that sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light.
In one of his most celebrated poems, W.B. Yeats laments the Delta island of heroic romantic values and the predominance at seaside of a bourgeois materialism. In the poem we're about to hear, Yeats evokes a desiccated urban world of money-driven Philistinism and contrasts it with the noble sacrifices of patriots such as John O'Leary, Robert Emmet and Wolfe Tone. Teri Murray reads, September 1913 by W.B. Yeats.
September 1913 by William Butler Yeats. What need you being come to sense but fumble in a greasy till, and add the halfpence to the pence, and prayer to shivering prayer, until you have dried the marrow from the bone? For men were born to pray and save. Romantic Ireland's dead and gone, it's with O'Leary in the grave. Yet they were of a different kind, the names that stilled your childish play. They have gone about the world like wind, but little time they had to pray. For whom the hangman's rope was spun, and what, God help us, could they save? Romantic Ireland's dead and gone, it's with O'Leary in the grave. Was it for this the wild east spread, for grey wing upon every tide? For this all that blood was shed, for this Edward Fitzgerald died, and Robert Emmet and Wolfe Tone, all that delirium of the brave. Romantic Ireland's dead and gone, it's with O'Leary in the grave. Yet could we turn the years again, and call those exiles as they were, in all their loneliness and pain, you'd cry, some woman's yellow hair has maddened every mother's son. They weighed so lightly what they gave, but let them be, they're dead and gone, they're with O'Leary in the grave.
Our next poem is by Mark Strand, who was one of the great American poets of his generation. And the hallmarks of his style are precise language, surreal imagery, and the recurring theme of absence. We don't read poetry for the kind of truth that passes for truth in the workaday world, he says. And as is evident in this poem, the poet provides the reader with a surrogate world. Edward O'Dwyer reads, Buried Melancholy of the Poet by Mark Strand.
Buried Melancholy of the Poet, Mark Strand. One summer, when he was still young, he stood at the window and wondered where they had gone, those women who sat by the ocean, watching, waiting for something that would never arrive, the wind light against their skin, sending loose strands of hair across their lips. From what season had they fallen? From what idea of grace had they strayed? It was long since he had seen them in their lonely splendor, heavy in their idleness, enacting the sad story of hope abandoned. This was the summer he wandered out into the miraculous night, in the sea of dark, as if for the first time to shed his own light, but what he shed was the dark, what he found was the night.
Those of you familiar with the Leonard Cohen album, Dear Heather, will have heard him read on the album Villanelle for Our Time. This is actually a poem by the Canadian poet F.R. Scott and was written just about the time of the Second World War, or just after the Second World War. And Scott felt strongly that humankind must overcome its ingrained propensity for selfishness, and that only hope can sustain humans in the quest for a way to attain even a modicum of solidarity. Once hope is lost, fear and worse will gain ground, and the tragic consequences of that result are well known. Donal Thurlow reads Villanelle for Our Time by F.R. Scott.
Yeah, I'm not letting it come, so I won't be singing this. Villanelle for Our Time. From bitter searching of the heart, quickened with passion and with pain, we rise to play a greater part. This is the faith from which we start. Men shall know commonwealth again from bitter searching of the heart. We love the easy and the smart, but now, with keener hand and brain, we rise to play a greater part. The lesser loyalties depart, and neither race nor creed remain from bitter searching of the heart, not steering by the venal chart that tricked the mass for private gain. We rise to play a greater part, reshaping narrow law and art, whose symbols are the millions slain. From bitter searching of the heart, we rise to play a greater part.
Forgive my Polish pronunciation here. Wislawa Szymborska, Polish poet, was the recipient of the 1996 Nobel Prize for Literature. She has been described as a Mozart of poetry. Vogue magazine, a journal not normally associated with commenting on poetry, and talking about Wislawa Szymborska said, "We don't always know what life consists of until poetry tells us. This poem continues the theme of Auden's Another Time and the Dylan Thomas poem, Do Not Go Gentle to the Good Night. Evelyn Casey reads, Nothing Twice by Wislawa Szymborska.
Nothing can ever happen twice. In consequence, the sorry fact is that we arrive improvised and leave without a chance to practice. Even if there's no one dumber, if you are the planet's big stumps, you can't repeat this class in summer. This course is only offered once. No day copies yesterday, no night will teach what bliss is in the precisely the same way, with exactly the same kisses. One day, perhaps some idle tongue mentions your name by accident. I feel as if a rose were flung into the room, all hue and scent. The next day, though, you are here with me. I can't help looking at the clock. A rose, what could that be? Is it a flower or a rock? Why do we treat the fleeting day with so much needless fear and sorrow? It's in its nature not to stay. Today is always gone tomorrow. With smiles and kisses, we prefer to seek a chord beneath our star. Although we're different, we concur, just as two drops of water are.
Sunstone, an epic poem, is the most famous poetic work of Mexican writer Octavio Paz. 584 lines in length, it's a structure that reflects the circuit of the planet Venus, of the orbit of Venus. When Paz won the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1990, the Swedish Academy declared Sunstone to be one of the high points of Paz's poetry. In this poem, Paz has created a jewel of inestimable value. This is a poem about the power of love to free us from the chains of time. In the poem, Paz approaches a number of women. He approaches them as divine and as human, often with a kind of biblical eroticism, reminding one of the Song of Solomon. Humans must find salvation within each other, the poem concludes. This is one of the great poems of Latin American literature. Donal Thurlow reads Sunstone by Octavio Paz.
A crystal willow, a poplar of water, a tall fountain the wind arches over, a tree deep-rooted yet dancing still, a course of a river that turns, moves on, doubles back, and comes full circle, forever arriving. The calm course of the stars, or an unhurried spring, water with eyes closed, welling over, with oracles all night long. A single presence in a surge of waves, wave after wave, till it covers all. A rain of green that knows no decline, like the flash of wings unfolding in the sky. A path through the wilderness of days to come, and the gloomy splendor of misery like a bird whose song can turn a forest to stone. And the imminent joys on branches that vanish, the hours of light pecked away by the birds, and the omens that slipped past the hand. A sudden presence like a burst of song, like the wind singing in a burning building, a glance that holds the world and all its seas and mountains dangling in the air. Body of light filtered through an agate, thighs of light, belly of light, the bays, the solar rock, cloud-covered body, colour of a brisk and leaping day. The hour sparkles and has a body, the world is visible through your body, transparent through your transparency. I travel my way through galleries of sound, I flow among echoing presences. I cross transparencies as though I were blind. A reflection erases me. I'm born in another. O forest of pillars that are enchanted, through arches of light I travel into the corridors of a diaphanous form. I travel your body like the world. Your belly is a plaza full of sun. Your breasts, two churches where blood performs its own parallel rites. My glances cover you like ivory. You are a city the sea assaults, a stretch of ramparts split by the light into halves the colour of peaches. A domain of salt, rocks and birds, under the rule of oblivious noon, dressed in the colour of my desires. You go your way naked as my thoughts. I travel your eyes like the sea. Tigers drink their dreams in those eyes. The hummingbird burns in those flames. I travel your forehead like the moon, like the cloud that passes through your thoughts. I travel your belly like your dreams.
There should be new ways of thinking and feeling about the poetry of our day, of making it accessible, inclusive, and a transformative part of our everyday lives. So said the poet Richard Blanco, who visited Limerick in 2014 and read here as part of the City of Culture celebrations. Richard Blanco's family are from Cuba, and he read at the ceremony when the United States opened its embassy in Cuba again on August 14th last year. Today's poem captures the real spirit of Cuba. Dominic Taylor reads Havanasis by Richard Blanco.
Havanasis by Richard Blanco. In the beginning, before God created Cuba, the earth was chaos, empty of form and without music. The Spirit of God stirred over the dark tropical waters, and God said, "Let there be music." And a soft conga began a 1-2 beat in the background of the chaos. Then God called up Yamaya and said, "Let the waters under heaven amass together, and let dry land appear." It was done. God called the fertile red earth Cuba, and the massed waters the Atlantic. And God saw that it was good, tapping his foot to the conga beat. Then God said, let the earth sprout papaya and cocoa and white cocoa flesh, malanga roots and mangoes of all shades of gold and amber. Let there be tobacco and cafe and sugar for the cafe. Let there be rum. Let there be waving plantains and guayabas and everything tropical-like. God saw this was good, then fashioned palm trees, his pièce de resistance. Then God said, let there be a moon and stars to light the nights over the Club Tropicana, and a sun for the 365 days of the year. God saw this was good. He called the night, nightlife. The day he called paradise. Then God said, let there be fish and fowl of every kind, and there were spicy shrimp enchilada, chicken fricassee, codfish bacalao, and fritters. But he wanted something more exciting and said, enough, let there be pork. And there was pork. Deep fried, whole roasted pork rinds and sausages. He fashioned goats, used their skins for bongos and batus. He made claves and maracas and every kind of percussion instrument known to man. Then, out of a red lump of clay, God made Tanio and set it in a city he called Havana. Then he said, it is not good that Tanio be alone. Let me make him helpmates. And so he made the mulata to dance the guaranico with Tanio, the guajiro to cultivate his land, and his folklore, Cachita the sorceress to strike the rhythm of his music, and a poet to work the verses of their paradise. God gave them dominion over all the creatures and musical instruments, and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, eat pork, drink rum, make music, and dance. On the seventh day, God rested from his labors of his creation. He smiled upon the celebration and listened to their music.
The next poem is a report of a story of a conversation between the sun and the poet. The sun in the sky is rather petulant because the poet is sleeping late. The theme of the poem is, I believe, the importance of making your own days. Evelyn Casey reads a true account of talking to the sun at Fire Island by Frank O'Hara.
The sun woke me this morning, loud and clear, saying, hey, I've been trying to wake you for the 15 minutes. Don't be so rude. You're only the second poet I've ever chosen to speak to personally. So why aren't you more attentive? If I could burn through your window, I would, to wake you up. I can't hang around here all day. Sorry, son, I said, up late last night talking to Hal. When I awoke Mayakovsky, he was a lot more prompt, the sun said, petulantly. Most people are up already, waiting to see if I'm going to put in an appearance. I tried to apologize. I missed you yesterday. That's better, he said. I didn't know you came out. You may be wondering why I've come so close. Yes, I said, beginning to think, wondering if he wasn't burning me anyway. Frankly, I wanted to tell you I like your poetry. I see a lot on my rounds, and you're okay. You may not be the greatest thing on earth, but you're different. Now, I've heard some say you're crazy, they being excessively calm themselves to mind, and other crazy poets think you're boring reactionary. Not me. Just keep on like I do. Pay no attention. You'll find that people always complain about the atmosphere. Either too hot, or too cold, or too bright, or too dark, days too short or too long. If you don't appear at all, they think you're lazy or dead. Just keep right on, I like it. And don't worry about your image, poetic or natural. The sun shines on the jungle, you know, on the tundra, the sea, the ghetto. Wherever you were, I knew it was you moving. I was waiting for you to get to work. And now that you are making your own days, so to speak, even though no one reads you with me, you won't be depressed. Not everyone can look up, even at me. It hurts their eyes. Oh, son, I'm so grateful to you. Thanks. And remember, I'm watching. It's easier for me to speak to you out here. I don't have to slide down between the buildings to get your ear. I know you love Manhattan, but you ought to look up more often and always embrace things, people, earth, sky, stars, as I do, freely and with the appropriate sense of space. This is your inclination, known in the heavens, and you should follow it to hell if necessary, which I doubt.
Maybe we'll speak again in Africa, of which I too am especially fond. Go back to sleep now, Frank. I may leave a tiny poem in that brain of yours as my farewell. Son, don't go. I was awake and last. No, I must. They're calling me. Who are they? Rising, he said. Someday you know. They're calling you too. Darkly arose, and I slept. Thank you.
Bertolt Brecht, the German poet and playwright, he fled Nazi Germany before the onset of the Second World War, and after the war he willingly moved to the Soviet-occupied East Germany and became a proponent of the regime there. Brecht believed, and I quote him, he said, art is not a mirror with which to reflect reality, but a hammer with which to shape it. That quote itself is quite revolutionary, or was in the world of art. His dramas continue to touch audiences and spark political criticism around the world 50 years after his death. The poem we are about to hear shows Brecht's political stance that workers are central to the political, economic and social actions of a society, but that is rarely properly or fully recognised. Dominic Taylor reads A Worker Reads History by Bertolt Brecht.
A Worker Reads History by Bertolt Brecht. Who built the 7 gates of Thebes? The books are filled with names of kings. Was it the kings who hauled the craggy blocks of stone? And Babylon, so many times destroyed, who built the city up each time? In which of Lima's houses, that city glittering with gold, lived those who built it? In the evening, when the Chinese wall was finished, where did the masons go? Imperial Rome is full of arcs of triumph. Who erected them? Over whom did the Caesars triumph? Byzantium lives in song, were all her dwellings palaces. And even in Atlantis, the night the seas rushed in, the drowning men still bellowed for their slaves. Young Alexander conquered India, he alone. Caesar beat the Gauls. Was there not even a cook in his army? Philip of Spain wept as his fleet was sunk and destroyed. Were there no other tears? Frederick the Great triumphed in the 7-Year War. Who triumphed with him? Each page a victory, at whose expense the victory ball. Every 10 years a great man, who paid the bill? So much history, so many questions.
I know it's lunchtime, but there are just a few poems left for people who may have to depart. Our next poem is by Marta Rivero Garrido, an emerging poet and writer from the Dominican Republic. She's the great-granddaughter of Gaston Fernando de Lima, another great poet from the Dominican Republic. Brendan Hayes reads, Don't Fall in Love with a Woman Who Reads, by Marta Rivera Garrido.
Thanks. I got the difficult one for the novelty act. Don't Fall in Love with a Woman Who Reads by Marta Rivera Garrido. Don't fall in love with a woman who reads, a woman who feels too much, a woman who writes. Don't fall in love with an educated, magical, delusional, crazy woman. Don't fall in love with a woman who thinks, who knows what she knows, and also knows how to fly. A woman sure of herself. Don't fall in love with a woman who laughs or cries making love, who knows how to turn her spirit into flesh, let alone one that loves poetry. They are the most dangerous. or spends half an hour contemplating a painting and isn't able to live without music. Don't fall in love with a woman who's interested in politics and is rebellious and feels a huge horror from injustice. One who does not like to watch television at all, or a woman who is beautiful no matter the features of her face or her body. Don't fall in love with a woman who's intense, entertaining, lucid and irreverent. Don't wish to fall in love with a woman like that, because when you fall in love with a woman like that, whether she stays with you or not, whether she loves you or not, from a woman like that, you ain't ever coming back.
Fiona, Clark, Echlin will conclude our readings with a poem, The Mask of Anarchy by Shelley, and then she will read one of her own creations. Fiona, Clark, Echlin.
Actually, this poem runs to 370 lines, but I'm not going to read them all, I'll just read some of them. Shelley didn't always write odes to skylarks. This is a political poem, and it was written just after the Peterloo massacre in Manchester. What happened was that 60,000 workers came on a peaceful protest. And of course, what happened was that the few authorities panicked. They had a cavalry charge which mowed down quite a lot of the protesters who were just standing in peaceful protest. 40 were killed, 700 were injured. And this poem, The Mask of Anarchy, it's a political poem written in 1819. It's perhaps the first modern statement of the principle of non-violent resistance. I'll just read a bit of it. As I lay asleep in Italy, there came a voice from over the sea, and with great power it forth led me to walk in the visions of poesy. I met murder on the way. He had a mask like Castaway, very smooth he looked, yet grim. 7 bloodhounds followed him. All were fat, and well they might be in admirable plight, for 1 by 1 and 2 by 2 he tossed them human hearts to chew, which from his wide cloak he drew. Next came Fraud, and he had on, like Eldon, an ermined gown. His big tears that he wept well turned to millstones as they fell. And the little children who round his feet played to and fro, thinking every tear a gem, had their brains knocked out by them. Clothed with the Bible as with light, and the shadows of the night, like Sigma's next hypocrisy on a crocodile rolled by. And many more destructions played in this ghastly masquerade, all disguised even to the eyes, like bishops, lawyers, peers, or spies. And then he goes on about the workers who came to protest in innocence. We have waited, weak and lone, for thy coming, mighty one. Our purses are empty, our swords are cold. Give us glory and blood and gold. And then, when one fled past, a manic maid, and her name was Hope. She said, but she looked more like despair as she cried out in the air, my father, time is weak and grey with waiting for a better day. See how idiot-like he stands, fumbling with his palsied hand. And then she lay down in the street, right before the horse's feet, expecting with a patient eye murder, fraud, and anarchy. And then he goes on, as if their own indignant earth, which gave the sons of England birth, had felt their blood upon her brow, and shuddering with a mother's throe, he turned every drop of blood with which her face had been bedewed to an accent unwithstood, as if her heart had cried aloud. Rise like lions after slumber, in unvanquishable number, shake your chains to earth like dew, which in sleep had fallen on you. Ye are many, they are few. What is freedom? You can tell that which slavery is too well, for its very name has grown to an echo of your own. 'Tis to work and have such pay as just keeps life from day to day, in your limbs as in a cell, for the tyrant's use to dwell, so that ye for them are made, loom and plough and sword and spade, with or without your own will bent to their defence and nourishment. I won't read any more of it, but perhaps just two more little stanzas. Ye who suffer woes untold, or to feel or to behold your lost country bought and sold with a price of blood and gold, let a vast assembly be, and with great solemnity declare with measured words that ye are as God made ye.
Thanks, Fiona. It's probably very appropriate that she read Shelley there, because Shelley's probably well known, or most well known for saying that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. And I think what we've heard today here is some of the poets who had that influence over people through their art, convey knowledge that helps us to see the world differently. So that's the end of our gathering. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I'd also like to thank the staff at Human Wire of the Hunt Museum for allowing us to put on our little show. We have more poetry next Tuesday in the Buttery Wine Bar in the Bedford Road, where we have our monthly On the Nail literary gathering. You're all welcome to come along to that, and hope to see you there. Now, as I said, that's the end of the show, but before we go, there's just one special thing I want to do. I want to invite up Teri Murray. Teri is one of our most illustrious poets, and she's gone through a pretty bad time recently, and she just recovering from a serious illness, and she had to bury her mother there about 2 weeks ago. So she's got a special poem she just wants to recite for us. Thank you, Teri.
Thank you, Don. I just wanted to read this today. My mum's ashes has been buried on Tuesday in Mount with my dad, and by synchronicity it's his birthday on the Tour de May. So this is called Mola's Four Coats. £60 he laid on the counter for it, the beaver lamb 4 coats, in Pim's department store, South Great Georgia Street. It was resting in a box covered by sheets of white tissue paper, as snow covers a field laying fallow until it was crushed by our fingers. My sister Brenda tried it on once when it was still new, and she was lost in the folds. It smelled of camphor and young feral things, pelts and wild places. Her hair, tiny golden buttercups, thickening the collar. The glasses true she tried, Blue frames a match for her eyes, wings on either side, gilded like the sandals of the messenger god Mercury from one of our old storybooks. When it was well worn, Mona draped it over our bed, bald patches on the skin of the hide, tears in the grey satin lining, only the huge Ford Jimmy Joe of a button hanging on by a thread. Sometimes I think I still feel it there, grateful for the warmth, taking the harm out of the night, smelling of childhood, sleek young bodies nestling together in winter, of camphor, fallow fields, small fingers crushing snow, and wild, untamable places. Thank you.